everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About Brand. I, of course, am your host, Christine Gritman, and I'm coming at you every single week with another smart guest expert talking about different elements of branding, especially personal branding. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether you are joining us on the Adweek Podcast Network or whether you're watching this video show on YouTube. Every week, we've got the podcast dropping Monday. We've got my Chat About Brand Twitter chat on Tuesdays. And then, of course, we have the video podcast on YouTube on Fridays. So make sure that you're subscribed for all of that so that you don't miss a week. This week, I'm very excited. We have a fantastic guest who is an expert on many, many things. Content marketing, branding, all those things. But today we're talking about websites. He is definitely an expert on how to make sure to have an impactful website that is on brand. My guest today is the fabulous Andy Crestodina. Andy, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Christine. Thank you. This is great.
We try to make it a happy place over here.
Very happy. I love it.
All right, so let's get right into it. When it comes to branding, a lot of people, especially like creators, which is such a thing right now, a lot of people feel like I'm doing so much branding and so much of my content creation and so much of what I do on social media. So that begs the question, are websites still necessary? I absolutely feel that they are for a variety of reasons, but I would love to hear your take on that. Why do people still need a website for their personal brand or their brand in general?
Well, I try not to have too many biases, but I think that it is possible to build a brand and have a very successful business. Creators are great examples where they just kind of live on a platform and do very well without an actual digital property of their own, without a destination, without a platform that they can call home. But for the vast majority of us, right, unless you're seeking to become kind of a, like the hardcore influencer marketing strategy where you're going to build it up on one platform and just own it and live there. A lot of businesses, for the visitor or for the searcher who's brand aware and types in the name of your business, what do they see? Where do they land? What do search results pages look like for the company name if you don't have your own platform, if you don't have a website? You have no analytics. You have you'll never grow your email list. There's you really lose control to some extent of your, who owns your content. For 99+% of us, we still need a website, and that website is in a really important destination. It's home base for all the brand building that we do. And so I'm talking about like normal businesses, lead generation marketers, demand gen marketers, everyone except, those big personality YouTubers. Nothing against YouTube. I love it. I love that we're here. It's a platform I love and use and market myself with. But no, I still think most people do need a website.
Absolutely. It ties it all together. It's a home base, as you said. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a couple different pathways I would love to go down. And I promise everyone we will talk about how to make sure your website is well branded. But first, I want to go down some of those pathways you mentioned. You mentioned that without a website, you don't get that kind of search, that SEO oomph from, although it's interesting because social media platforms are coming up increasingly high in search results. Sometimes even if you have a website, your business's Facebook page or your LinkedIn or even your Google My Business profile, certainly if you've set that up, those things, although now it's called Google Business Tools.
That's right. I know, I saw that too.
We all know what we're talking about though. Those tend to come up even above a website, but I'd still love to hear from you how a website does still factor in to that SEO. And then after that, just to warn you, we're going to dig into that growing the email list part. But first, let's talk about SEO. So even if social media and other things come up above your website, why is a website still an important part of your digital footprint?
Well, if I had a choice of what would rank for my business name, my LinkedIn business page or my company's website, I would absolutely 100%, and I will say this until I will die on this hill, it is far, far better to get a click for the visitor to go to your website, which is a platform that you control, rather than a click where the visitor lands on LinkedIn. I have an eye tracking tool, and if I did an eye tracking study of people on LinkedIn, we would quickly see that they're looking at notifications, they see ads, they see alerts, they see other people, suggested things. You don't control that experience. The owner of that website, LinkedIn, owned by Microsoft, is 100% focused on monetizing that audience, and they are happy to sell an ad there, right? They're trying to keep that visitor engaged by getting them to stay in their, jump back into the stream or
They're
look at
selling
notifications.
distraction.
Exactly. Your site, you're the owner of your site. You have the opportunity to kind of maximize the, that intent of that visitor, keep them engaged, build loyalty and trust and control their experience. It's a branded asset. LinkedIn is branded as LinkedIn. If you care about brand, why are you sending all your traffic to a different brand? LinkedIn is not your brand.
Absolutely. And speaking of branded asset, hopefully your website is not like Wix.com/ your business name. I'm going to change tracks a little bit. I would love for you to tell us about how to make sure that experience you're leading them towards is distraction free and branded and built to maximize you, not LinkedIn's advertisers.
Sure. Yeah. So think about the visitor. Think about their experience. Someone searches for you, searches for your company name, searches for the category that your company is in, even better, brand new discovery, being discovered by people who don't know your brand yet. They click, page loads, they land. What happens next? Web design is about creating a visual hierarchy that guides that visitor's attention and their eyes through a series of messages that align with their priorities, their needs. Every visitor has information needs. There's a true story in the life of every visitor to every web page. Visitor lands on social media site, their visual hierarchy is to guide them toward that little red dot that shows they've got some notifications. It's trying to keep them in the platform. LinkedIn does better if you leave, a company page. Facebook does better if you leave a company page and click on an ad or something else. So the branded experience on the website really should align with the needs of that visitor. Step one, what category are you in? Are they in the right place? Tell them what your brand is doing, right? Indicate the relevance for search and be descriptive in your labels, navigation labels, headers, and tell them first, like what you do, right? Why are they here? After that, we can start to get more emotional, a little more clever, do some fun stuff, be unexpected. But I strongly recommend that every brand is benefited by sort of descriptive labels at the top. Clarity comes before clever. I know that we've all got fun brand messages, but let's prioritize, answering the visitor's first question: am I in the right place?
That is a really good point, because so many brands, especially smaller brands and personal brands that maybe started with some sort of template, they often start with sort of that beautiful picture at the top and something witty. And I love your point, which is clarity first. Make sure they know they're in the right place before you give them all the specific warm fuzzies and cute, clever stuff. So how can we know what that message is, though? Because you said that it has to align to the visitor's needs. How do we really know what the visitor's need is versus our own need?
Well, we should definitely be understanding of our audience, right? We should have done the research and been upfront about knowing what this person really cares about. The foundation of a brand is its position in the context of the competitive set for that person. So ideally, we're prioritizing that and just describing the category that we're in. Of course, good headline for a homepage for me says something like web design and development. 20 years of web design and development. I would never use a tagline there, right? If the homepage headline is a tagline, you might fail what we call the backyard barbecue test. Try this. If I asked you what you do for a living and your answer was simply reading to me the headline on your homepage, would I know what you do for a living? Or did you cause instant brand confusion? A clever headline, a tagline as a header on the homepage really risks being confusing to the visitor and kind of being like really all about you instead of being about them first. So I think it's an important thing, right? To just make sure that your homepage header passes the backyard barbecue test. Just read it out loud. You'll know right away.
That is such a key test. And it's one that I know I myself fail. So I need to go back. This is one of those conversations where I know that I'm going to go back and redo everything. This happens sometimes also when I talk to like LinkedIn experts. I'm like, oh, I got to go change all of this. So
I
see,
know that feeling.
everybody's learning here,
I know
especially
that
me.
feeling. Yep, yep. I feel the
So
same sometimes.
so backyard barbecue test, what do you do? At what point do you make it clear though who you do it for? Is
Mm.
that often part of in the same message? Is that a secondary part of the messaging? Where does that fit in the hierarchy?
I mean, it could be right there in the same message. The header is an opportunity sometimes to just name your target audience. We do, um, leadership coaching for mid-level managers. 100% of people who land on that are going to know if it's for them or not. And by the way, Christine, what I love there is that about the question is sort of um, the other side of it is to help people who aren't in the right place get the heck out of your funnel. You don't want an unqualified lead. So we're not trying to be everything to everybody. That's what branding is. It's about making a decision and choosing what is our audience, what's our segment, what's our position, what wins the sales conversation, and who isn't part of that conversation. Who are we not talking to? So when you declare the audience and make it explicit and specific and right there in black and white text, then the person who it's not a fit for will immediately know that and leave the website, which is great, right? That's not our audience.
Absolutely. Get out of here. We don't want those
Dang it. Get out
distractions.
of
You're
here.
a distraction. Now, to that end, though, the backyard barbecue test, the headline, what do you do? A lot of other people do that too. No matter
Hmm.
what it is that you do, there are absolutely other people and businesses who do that too. So, how do we put our brand in there in a way that is, and what are some ways to put our brand in there in ways that are immediately unique and apparent, but at the same time don't distract from the point?
Oh, so one of the strongest ways to differentiate a brand is to use evidence to then support the assertion you just made in the headline. So it's just to show, like, I mentioned like years in business or number of happy customers. You can use data, things like this, like testimonials differentiate your brand. You can let the audience themselves be the messenger, like just using quotes from people that you worked with before. But I think there's also opportunities to be really distinctive in the brand message, just through navigation and the main structure of the site. I saw a site, you may know him, Douglas Burdett, who does the Marketing Book podcast. His site is like, I think it's salesartillery.com. He's got a big page at the top of his site that says, you know, marketing agency addiction. And you click on that page and you read down, he's like, are you addicted to your marketing agency? And it's just disarming. It's like so unusual. It's a very distinctive brand voice that comes straightforward, right to the point. I mean, you feel like you're talking to him while you read it, but it's a great example of how just good copywriting can be so empathetic and be very distinctive, very differentiated. So I think that this is part of the art and science of it all. But really, we're trying to not just be bland. Just look at your page, look at any page, and ask yourself: could anybody that was just started yesterday write this same page? Could a startup born yesterday write every word that you wrote? If so, you didn't differentiate, add evidence, or add that strong point of view.
And one great thing about that example also is that it shows that you can have a strong brand voice and you can be creative without sacrificing clarity. In fact,
Yeah.
clarity can almost be the most creative part of all. It's a creative challenge, right? In a sense.
It is. Yeah, I mean, we all got into this business because we wanted to make stuff and do cool things and point at something and, show that we did it. Um, and so that's part of the challenge. I mean, some sites fail because they're just too dry
Hmm.
and they sound like an SEO wrote it and it's just all keywords and boring
Yeah.
text, undifferentiated for that reason. Other sites sort of fail because they're overly branded. Everything's a tagline. It's all super clever.
Too
You
cute.
can't actually tell, like, what, can they help me? It's sort of, uh, at some point, we just have to say we do X and we do it for Y and just be specific.
Absolutely. And to that point about not wanting it to seem too dry and like it's just written for SEO purposes, you mentioned including data. What
Mm.
are some ways that we can do that without just hitting people in the face on our website? Like, here's a chart, here's a white paper, here's some, like, what are some ways of making data, part of the experience that doesn't make people run and that sort of has a brand feel to it? Because if anything, data is so empirical. you
It
know
is. Yeah, it could be dry. Data doesn't usually come across as dry if it's handled as a visual. But just like for an example, let's say you and I launched a company that helps people with podcasts and YouTube promotion. We could say that we do, podcast production and video promotion. But then why do people believe us? If we just say that we do that, we're just making a claim, an unsupported claim. The goal in digital is partly to just avoid making unsupported marketing claims. The platforms actually know this. If you scroll down a LinkedIn profile, you're going to get to a section called endorsements and a section called recommendations. What is that? It's a social proof. So you can add social proof. Social proof tends to be engaging. It's qualitative. Data is just quantitative evidence. So, Christine, you and I could say, we've done 65 podcasts. We've done, we've built audiences with over 1 million YouTube views total. We could just kind of, we've worked together on these things, or we have a combined 35 years of experience or something like this. Those are just simple little data points. It's not like a white paper. It's like just a subhead.
It's conversational. It's conversational data.
It's the stuff you would say in a conversation. Yeah, exactly. It is Thank you for that excellent point. It emphasizes something that I try to remind people of. A great page emulates a sales conversation. So whatever the data is, it needs to support the points you're making and be relevant to that audience. It's not just there for us. Really, nothing on this page is there for us. Some brand folks kind of focus on themselves a bit too much, and the copy sounds like we love us, not what your visitor cares about. But yeah, it should emulate a conversation. In other words, answer the visitor's top questions, address their objections, and support those assertions with evidence.
Now, this one is going to be a little bit loaded. We have all seen those websites that are just stuffed to the gills. They're impossible to navigate. There's submenus upon submenus. And what a website does or doesn't need varies wildly depending on what they're trying to do, what kind of content they have up there, and who they're trying to serve. Mm-hmm. But in your estimation, as someone who has seen and touched a lot of websites, what do you feel are some must-haves, and what do you feel is like pet peeve nonsense that you wish people would just stop doing on their websites?
Boy, there's a lot of problems with websites generally. We already talked about a few. A lot of websites fail to provide any supportive evidence. A lot of websites fail to be descriptive. It's hard to tell. They kind of fail that 5-second test or backyard barbecue test. There's other sites like you mentioned that are just where the marketers clearly did not make a decision. Instead, they try to say yes to everything, and their navigation has literally 80 items or more. What we need to remember is that if your website were a town, there'd be a highway flowing through it. Look at the navigation summary, which is a report in Google Analytics, and you'll see what the top path is. Where do people go from where? Now you can use that data to make better decisions and remove visual noise, sharpen your focus on the most important sections for your visitor, potentially rename some of your navigation labels. This slide shows another example of marketers failing to make a tough decision. Slideshows have been there's strong evidence showing the lack of effectiveness of slideshows. They're basically hiding subsequent slides from your visitor until they wait or click. Not a great idea. Why do you want, if it's important enough to be on your website, why make your visitor wait or click to see it? So I'd remove slideshows. Instead, I would kind of stack those messages. Also, calls to action. A lot of sites just completely miss this. Contact us is not a call to action. You need to contact. Good CTAs are specific and descriptive. Schedule a call with a podcast production pro. That's a reason to click, right? Ask us your toughest question, or that sounds really easy to do. I'm not. It's low commitment. So these are like immediate opportunities. Anybody can just within an hour. Right? We could use analytics, remove all the pages that no one's clicking on, which drive attention to the more important things. We could add clarity in our headers. We could just remove the slideshow and just focus on one key message at the top. We could add calls to action that sound either valuable or easy. Contact us doesn't sound either valuable or easy. And so everything I'm suggesting is really no cost, maybe half a day's work, and can have a big impact on conversion rates and lead gen, but also just the perception of your brand. Be helpful. Don't be confusing. That's part of the brand experience.
And it can also change, to your point. I mean, the way people expect to navigate a website may shift over time, different website design conventions. So it's not set in stone. You can always follow the data. I love your point about following the data, seeing what people are actually doing, and being responsive to that. I had a question about your opinion on something. Some websites, and especially a lot of those build your own website things, a lot of them have the ability to embed some of your social media into the website. Do you think that that's generally a good practice, a bad practice, and why?
Well, the widgets that allow you to embed social media um, are magical in a way because you just have to keep social media updated, and that element on your site is always updated. So, like an Instagram feed on like a team or culture page, very cool. The problem is those widgets always allow the visitor to click and go to the platform. So we have to ask ourselves, do we, look at anything on your site, right? Look at the social icons in the footer, everything in the header. Do you really want someone to click on that? If they click on that, what do they see? So go ahead and click on those things. If you embed a widget, don't forget to click on it to jump over to YouTube or wherever and just look at that experience. Is that something that you want your visitor to do? Or did you put in an exit sign that really sends them away to a place from which they'll never come back? So we should choose our widgets carefully. It makes a lot of sense, especially for brands that are super active on that platform, get good engagement there, where a follow over there is like a very positive thing. And we've tracked that back to alignment with a business objective. Great. But otherwise, even for, it's sort of like an example might be a video player. I love the YouTube video player and I use it for every content marketing video I make, but I would never use the YouTube player for a video testimonial because that visitor's high consideration. They're looking at a testimonial. They're really thinking of using us. So for bottom of funnel content, bottom of funnel pages, sales pages, I would never embed a social media widget or use a YouTube player. But in the context of content marketing or on a team page or culture where the visitor has lower intent or they're just interested in getting to know us, sure, could make perfect sense.
Speaking of bottom of funnel, how do you feel about having gated parts of a website? Do you feel like that should be kind of a hidden, totally separate thing? Do you feel how do you feel is the best way to handle that sort of thing?
We did a survey once of a bunch of B2B marketers and a bunch of B2B website visitors, B2B buyers, potential buyers, and we asked about gated content. And is gated? Do you strongly disagree or agree? How bad are gates? The marketers are pretty freaked out about gates, very nervous. They feel squeamish about it and sort of feel bad about gating anything. But the other audience in the survey, the website visitors, reported they didn't have a problem with gates at all if the content was valuable. Gates can work. It has to be, you're living up to a big promise you make when you're making that exchange, an email address for a piece of content. I'm not using any gates. I'm hitting all my goals without them. I've never gated anything, for the record, but it doesn't mean that I don't believe in gates or think they can't work. Most studies show that they do work at growing an email list. And an email list is magical because it allows you to market to people without a big platform in the middle. Except for email, every other traffic source has big tech between you and your visitor. You do not have total control in any platform, right? You don't own your Facebook followers or your Google rankings, but you do own your email list. So I like any idea that helps people grow their list. I have no problem with gated content if it's working. You know it's working or not based on the engagement from it. There's a SEO case to be made for making everything ungated. You're probably going to attract more links, which is a factor in SEO. But Christina, I have to say, let's be open to anything that works. Why not?
And that brings us so beautifully to the next thing I wanted to ask about, which is, you mentioned at the top of the episode that one of the great things about websites, about that owned branded property, is that will help you build your email list. So we'll talk about why it matters to build your email list, and I think you just kind of did, which is that it's the most direct content you have with your audience. But how can you use your website to build your email list? Why is that necessarily a more effective email list builder than social media?
Boy, you might know more about growing a list on social media than I do. Where do we grow our email list in social?
You can always just tweet out or do posts that have the link to sign up for your email. But what are some ways for your website to do work, right? Because, the answer on social media is generally, post it. Post it with the call to action. But what are some good ways to get people who are visiting your website to sign up for your email list?
A good email sign-up form has the 3 Ps: prominence, promise, and proof. Prominence means that the email sign-up form is pretty obvious. It could be a pop-up, it might be a gated thing, it might be large at the top of the blog, it might be on, a sticky footer that's on the bottom of every post, it might be in the footer on every single page on the website. It's visually obvious, prominence. Promise is when you're being specific about what they're going to get. Why should I sign up for this email? If yours just says newsletter, sign up, submit, you didn't work hard enough on that. You didn't differentiate it. You weren't specific and descriptive enough. Why would someone do that? That'd be weird. So be specific about the topic, right? Get digital marketing tips every 2 weeks, or sign up for practical advice about content analytics and web design. Like, these are calls to action that tell someone why they should do something. So that's an easy thing, right? For sure, make the promise stronger and be specific what they get. And finally, proof. Prominence, promise, proof. The proof would be something that like indicates that other people have done it. Could be a tiny testimonial right next to the sign up. It could also be the size of the list. We have join the X number of people who get bi-weekly web marketing tips directly delivered to their inbox. That sounds like a reason to do it. It's mind-blowing to me just how many people are still signing up for emails. Our email form cranks. It's like between 10 and 20 people per day signing up. I don't know if I could do that on another platform. Maybe with your help, Christina, maybe I could.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check this. I'm going to have to check out your email sign-up form.
Yep.
Now, this last question, I think, it could get very technical. We could get into the weeds with this. I want to keep it pretty top line. I want to keep it like for a beginner. But part of the beauty of a website is that you have that data about traffic. You have the ability to have direct conversations and branded conversations with your visitors. And of course, we have the ability to connect things. We have, Facebook Pixel, we have Google Analytics, we have all of that. What, in your estimation, for someone just getting started on digging into this, what are some good, effective first steps that they can take to make the website work a little bit harder for your business as a tool that really allows you to own that data?
Well, Google Analytics is fundamentally just measuring the behavior of visitors on a website. So without Google Analytics, it's very hard to make good and smart, informed iterations to improve something. As we mentioned, like, is your navigation working? Is it broken? What's the click-through rate on your calls to action? You should know that. Everyone should know the click-through rates and the call to action. If you find out that it's like, 4% and you rewrite it and it goes up to 6%, you just generated 50% more demand, or at least traffic to your contact form with no cost. I mean, you just made a better CTA. So that's only possible to know whether your idea was good or whether the action you took worked is Google Analytics or similar. Facebook Pixels, all of that, yes. These days, it should all be managed inside something called Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager is a container of JavaScript that sits on your website, and it holds all of the tracking codes, the Facebook Pixel and Google Tag Manager and anything else. It takes a minute to get used to it, but once you're in it and it's in place, it's brilliant because it makes it much easier to add new tools, to track things differently, to set things up. You no longer need a programmer to add new tracking pixels to a website. You can just put them in the Google Tag Manager container, and the container's on every single page. It's called GTM, Google Tag Manager. It's a tool for managing all of the marketing tags on any website. That's just a quick kind of definition and intro, but it's best practices and we should all have it. It's just good governance to keep all your marketing tracking codes in one place.
Now, I warned you before we went live that I always come up with a question at the end that I'm like, oh, why didn't I do this earlier? I promise this one is my actual final.
Okay.
How to drive traffic to your website? Because if you're someone like me who spends all their time on social, you're already where the people are having those active conversations. How do you get people over to your website?
It is, you just asked like literally $1 million question.
Of course, at minute 29 of a 30-minute show. That's how I roll.
Okay. 2 fundamental ways: advertising or content marketing. That's how website visitors happen. I'm not an advertiser, so I'll skip all of that, but there's 100 different types. There's paid search, there's paid social, there's paid influencer marketing, all of those things. But on the organic side, the content marketing side, the 3 classic sources are search and social and email. Whatever you're doing and wherever you're doing it, search is very different and special because you can just make pages that are very detailed and very relevant for a phrase. If that's a phrase within reach, in other words, you have sufficient authority, ask me later, then that page might attract visitors for years or decades. I could show you tons of examples of pages that I have that have gotten hundreds of thousands of visitors over 10 plus years. Email and social, as you know, these are activity based, and you got to keep working at them. You keep getting smarter within them. But it's a lot of it comes down to, again, why would someone click on something? What's the call to action? What's the benefit? What's the emotional trigger for them? Why would I click on your social post? Ultimately, the reason is, again, empathy. That click helps me somehow. It solves a problem in my life. It brings me to a page that's got some information that I need, right? That's really what we're doing all day long, every day in driving traffic, is creating content and calls to action to bring someone to that content, whether it's in an email, social stream, wherever, and that an ad, and that aligns with that zero moment of truth, that true story in that life of that visitor. That's ultimately why people click and tap, is because they've done a split-second cost-benefit calculation and concluded that the benefit of clicking is greater than the cost of clicking. So be very specific in your calls to action, create content that's worthy of being visited, and just keep doing it and keep getting more data. You'll keep getting better at it. And eventually, our site, more than 1 million visitors a year, $0 spent on advertising. It works.
Wow. Oh my goodness, what a place to end it. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to go rip my website apart now. The time between the recording of this episode and the airing of this episode, it's going to get a total revamp, and then I'm going to listen to this episode, and it's all going to look like a mess to me again. But that's progress, right? Constant build, constant evolution, just like a brand.
Digital ink is never dry. You can keep changing it forever. It's not expensive or time-consuming to make little improvements to your website.
Absolutely.
It might make more sense. Instead of doing that next social post, go back to your site and maybe make an update there. It might the benefits are more durable. That improvement to your site will be there for years.
That's true. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Tell everyone where they can and should find you and what they will find there.
Orbitmedia.com is our website, and I write an article there once every 2 weeks. My best platforms are, I have an active YouTube channel now, which I kind of launched during COVID, and it's got quite a few things on it. Also, just LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. There's like a blue follow button. You can skip that and go down to the connect button if you'd like to interact a bit more. Just glad to be part of this. This was awesome. I think it's so fun. I should mention, I wrote a book that just came out. I'm terrible at promoting it. It's called Content Chemistry, version 6. The 6th edition is available now. And it's like 80 pages longer than the previous version. It's everything I know about digital marketing between 2 covers.
Ooh, love that. And those 80 pages are the best pages, obviously. Skip right to those. Just toss the rest. No, just kidding.
You're a pro at this, Christy. This was so great.
Thank you. It was so great to have you on. I was so excited to get you on this show because every time I've seen you speak, I've just learned so much. So, and again, I'm very excited that today's tips were so actionable. So I know exactly what I'm going to do when I go rip apart my website now.
We got to talk about brand. I just talked about brand with Christine. This was great.
Right? Ah, so excited. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And thank you so much for being here. Again, whether you are listening to this on the Adweek Podcast Network, whether you're watching this on YouTube, very, very happy to have you here. Make sure to tune in next week when I'll be talking to another smart expert about another element of branding, especially personal branding. Thanks so much. Bye. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About Brand, part of the Adweek Podcast Network and Acast Creator Network. This podcast was produced by Christine Gritman, executive produced by Al Manarino and John Heil, and edited by Christine Gritman. You can listen and subscribe to all of Adweek's podcasts by visiting adweek.com/podcasts. Stay updated on all things Adweek Podcast Network by following us on Twitter @Adweek Podcasts. And if you have a question or suggestion for the show, send us an email at podcast@adweek.com.